In our last lesson of Unit 7, we're going to take a look at the idea of manifest destiny and the actions that get the U.S. involved in extending our nation westward. The idea of manifest destiny began to occur to Americans, or certain Americans in power, after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. And it was the idea that somehow it was God's will that America should extend all the way to the Pacific. Hence, we've got this 1872 painting with sort of the angel in the air as Americans are heading west through various means. You see horse and wagon and walking, and of course we're going to plow because we're going to settle this land and farm it. You see some of the railroads in the background. We're going to talk in future units about extending railroads west, and so we'll get there. At this point, though, the border of the United States was the western Louisiana Purchase boundary, and we need to see how we make it across to the Pacific Ocean. This actually starts with an invitation from Mexico. We look at, let me see if I can make this a little bit larger. All right. It's this green piece of Texas, all right, that I'm circling here. This was Mexican territory, and Mexicans invited Texas. Mexicans invited Americans to come settle there, all right, and a number of Americans took advantage because that was good cotton growing land. They brought their slaves, and Mexico realizes a few years in that they had made a mistake. All right. Initially, Mexico made the Americans comply with certain requirements. They were supposed to swear allegiance to Mexico, convert to Catholicism, and learn Spanish. This isn't really going to happen. You can see here in 1829, Mexico abolishes slavery. Mexico shuts the door on the Americans, but it really was kind of too late at that point. There were quite a few Americans that were already living in Texas, and those Americans, who now called themselves Texans, decided that they wanted to take that land and break it away from Mexico. So we have a Texas Revolution that we see here in 1836, sort of a war for Texas independence, and the Texans win. We see here the Mexican army is going to move into Texas, obviously, to maintain control over it. General Santa Anna, in charge of the Mexican army, is actually going to get captured. And in the Battle of San Jacinto, which you see all the way over on the right-hand side of the map, that's going to be the end of the war, because in exchange for his freedom, he's going to grant Texas its independence. You see from the notes here, Texans actually don't want to be independent. They want Texas to become a state in the United States, and they petition Congress to make that happen so that Texas can enter the United States as a slave state, and Congress holds them off, as you see here, until 1845. So between 1836 and 1845, Texas was actually an independent country. That fact is actually a point of pride for Texans. In any event, you can see from the map on the left that the United States is actually going to get into a border dispute with Mexico over where the border with Texas and Mexico actually lies. According to Mexico, the border was the Nueces River, seen here, all right, making Texas small, basically the piece in yellow. According to the United States, the border between Texas and Mexico included this green area. In other words, the border was the Rio Grande River, not the Nueces River further north. So when the United States marches troops south of the Nueces River, Mexico views that as an act of aggression, and we have the Mexican-American War. So Mexico attacks to defend its territory, and we end up in a war. The United States ends up in a war between 1846 and 1848 with Mexico. The result of this war is going to be the acquisition of the land that you see in red here. Basically the northern third of Mexico or so is going to become a part of the United States, which, to be honest with you, was a goal that the United States had at the time that it went to war with Mexico in 1846. So this completes the acquisition of territory all the way to the Pacific, at least as far as the Southwest is concerned. So the last piece that we need to talk about is the American Northwest, which you see here on the map, which is in purple and is called the Oregon Country. Notice some other lines on this map as well. You can see British territory, which we now call Canada, and we see that there was a treaty that was negotiated in 1818, creating the line between the northern United States and Canada. So at the time, there was a slogan, 5440 or fight, that people in the United States wanted to extend the United States north to the 54 degree 40 north latitude line, all right, to encompass all of the Oregon country. That's not going to happen, as you see here. The result in an 1846 treaty is simply going to extend the line that already existed out to the Pacific Ocean. And the result then is that this purple area of the Oregon country to the south of that line is going to become part of the United States. This is going to be done peacefully. No shots are going to be fired. It's also going to complete manifest destiny. So we see here in the map now all of the different pieces of the continental United States that were acquired and the years of their acquisition. And the United States extends from the Atlantic Ocean, where it started, all the way to the Pacific Ocean by 1848. Thus, manifest destiny, or the idea that was God's will that the U.S. extend to the Pacific, was now complete. Just to sum up how that happened again, the U.S. annexes Texas in 1845. Keep in mind, Texas had become independent from Mexico in 1836. We are then going to get into a boundary dispute with Mexico, and as a result of that, we are going to acquire the Mexican territory, which extends the U.S. to the Pacific. And during that time, we're also going to sign a treaty with Britain for the Oregon Territory, completing manifest destiny and the end of this unit.